Today, I have the pleasure to present you Berta Aznar. She's going to talk us about the digital gender-based violence. It's something that is quite new. This kind of violence, because the digital violence is something new that appears with the social networks and all this kind of stuff. She's a PhD, has a PhD in psychology, and is a professor at the University of Ramon, where she directs also the Institut Català de les Dones de Blanquerna, chair of the Addressing of Gender-Based Violence and Equality Policies, and her research focus on gender-based violence and power dynamics in relationships. In recent years, she has incorporated the analysis of the different forms of violence that occur in the digital environment. She has published, of course, several academic works and participated in competitive research projects, I imagine at national and European level. It's here also. She combines research with the knowledge transfer to institutions, as she's going to do here now today, particularly in the fields of prevention and the response to gender-based violence in social and digital contexts. Berta, the floor is yours. Okay.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose, for the presentation and also for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about
click there. I think
where the middle.
click the screen and then you can.
This meeting is being.
Okay, I have to put in the okay. Okay, let's say. No.
And just click wherever in the screen. You should be able to move.
Let me see. No. Or I don't know how to do it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Okay, it's working. Thank you, Nuria. Thank you. Okay, so the title of the presentation of today is, as Maria Jose said, Digital Gender-Based Violence, Data, Patterns, and Social Impact. And well, first of all, I'd like to highlight why this topic is relevant, why it matters. First of all, because digital gender-based violence has become a central social and public health issue in digital societies as ours. And data shows that its relevance increases as digital environments become core spaces for socialization, intimacy, and also identity formation. And as you know, it occurs especially in adolescents and also at youth. So those are two age groups that are very exposed to digital gender-based violence. As definitions, we could say that digital gender-based violence refers to every violent practice that is mediated by digital technologies, and research show that it disproportionately affects women and also girls. These violent practices, digital violence against women and girls, are not totally new, let's say. They are new forms of gender-based violence, but are totally connected to the offline violence against women and girls. As I said, research shows that this kind of violence in the digital environment does not constitute a real rupture with traditional forms of violence against women and girls. Actually, it is a continuation of this kind, let's say, traditional violence that we all knew from the past, but it is a continuation that is amplified by the technological affordances. And those technological affordances are the ones that amplify harm towards women and girls in this case. This violence is intensified due to some characteristics of the digital technologies that are, first of all, speed of dissemination, then the persistence of content. When content is posted in a platform, it is disseminated very rapidly. And besides this, the content is really difficult to be erased from those platforms. Besides this perception of anonymity that the digital environment generates for users also provokes or triggers like reduce of empathy. It's more difficult to connect with people and their suffering through the digital environment than in offline life, or this is what research show. And another characteristic that intensifies violence in the digital environment is scalability as well. And these characteristics, what they do is transforming what at the beginning are individual acts into systemic harm. In this case, systemic harm towards women and girls. Digital gender-based violence is a global phenomenon, and it's not context-specific. Actually, 73% of women worldwide have experienced online violence at least once in their life. Other data in the European context prove that 9 million women have experienced cyber violence since age 15. And it is important to mention that this age is it's getting more and more advanced with time because of the easy access that children have nowadays to social networks and the internet. And young women between 18 and 21 years old are at significantly higher risk. Actually, if we compare this age group with the group of women between 50 and 65 years old, it's 3 times more risky, let's say, than for those that are older. And of course, it is related to the exposure that young girls and women have to the digital space. It is important to understand this global complex issue of gender-based violence in the digital environment, that there is a gendered nature in this. Nature, I don't mean nature equal to biology at all. I mean nature equal to, it's a product of gender socialization. And what is proved is that women constitute the majority of victims of sexual cyber violence in general, but especially sexual cyber violence, as well as girls. And perpetrators, more than 90% of perpetrators are men. Of course, this data, the objective is not to demonize men at all. It's just to prove that there is a gender nature in digital violence. And that actually this kind of violence reflects a broader gender power structure, because gender-based violence, offline and online, has its origin in gender inequalities. These structural gender inequalities that still we have in our society. To share some data with you, what are the behavioral and social impacts that this cyber violence have on women in this case? 3 of 4 women who have experienced cyber violence have changed the way they use social media. Some of them, 32%, have stopped expressing their opinion on specific topics because of the hate and violence they have received because of just expressing their opinions that were not completely shared, let's say, by others. And then 28% have intentionally reduced their online activity. Actually, those impacts are the same ones that occur offline, because women, we tend not to, for example, occupy the space, I mean the street, depending on the time of the day. For example, at night, in general, we are afraid of using this space that is a public space because we feel threatened there. It's exactly the same as occurs in the digital space. Adolescents are a very high risk group for being victimized online, particularly girls, because they experience, first of all, higher exposure. You know that the last study I read about the amount of hours that adolescents spend in front of a screen said that they spend between 4 and 5 hours per day in the internet, or social networks, online video games. So that makes them be really exposed to the digital environment. Also, they receive violence at a greater intensity as well, especially girls. And that's why for them it has more severe emotional consequences, not only because of the intensity, but also because they are in a very vulnerable stage, in a very vulnerable developmental stage, which lasts approximately like from 12 to, they say nowadays, 21 years old. They are constructing their identity. Actually, this is the main crisis in adolescence. When adolescence finish, when the person is able to answer the questions of who I am, where do I belong to, and what are the main goals I have in life. This is how we go out from adolescence. That's why still some people that are 40, 50 years old still behave a bit like adolescents, because they didn't answer all these questions. Those are not easy questions to be answered, actually. So that's a very vulnerable stage, adolescence. Also, this vulnerability is triggered by all the changes they have, not only with regards to identity, but also with their body images, their physical appearance that change so much, and makes them have lots of doubt about themselves. Actually, in adolescent, self-esteem lowers, etc., etc. And also, they have high reliance on digital environments. They are very, very dependent on digital environments, the interactions they have there, the image that they see that social networks promote among women, or also men, because nowadays men are also influenced by all this aesthetic pressure, not as much as women, but as well. So adolescence is a very crucial stage, vulnerable stage, and all these feelings of being vulnerable and being aggressed in the digital environment have lots of negative consequences for them. Actually, nearly 85% of victims of sexual cyberviolence are minors, and 33% are under the age of 13 years old, which is a very alarming issue. There are some risk practices that are very common in adolescents that cannot be considered digital violence per se, because they don't imply or involve aggression, but they have to be conceived as risk factors, and those would be pornography consumption during adolescence and sexting as well. just to have an overview on pornography use among adolescents in our context in Spain. In the last study that we conducted with Lluís Ballester and Sandra Sedana in the Balearic Islands, we had a sample of more than 3,000 adolescents between 13 and 18 years old. The results showed that more than 90% of adolescents consumed pornography. And actually, between 1 and 14% of adolescents have a problematic pornographic use. That, to simplify, would be addiction or some addictive behavior towards pornography. And the prevalence is consistently higher among boys than girls of this problematic use. Actually, it is related to what we saw in this study that concluded that the motivations for the pornography use between the differences between boys and girls were that, in general, the main motivation for boys was masturbation, while for girls, the main motivation was to understand what they were expected to do in sexual intercourse. So the motivations were different, and also the addictive behavior was different in this sense. With regards to the age of initiation in pornography consumption, almost 80% of the sample reported that it was between 12 and 14 years old. And more than 14% were exposed before the age of 12 years old. And this is really important because we are talking about, we refer to children, adolescents, that they don't have a sexual imaginary. They've not had sexual experiences. And the first source of what sex or sexuality is expected to be is pornography. And that's how pornography is doing the work of a sexual educator, and that's really dangerous. And also, it's important to mention that this first contact with pornography, in lots of cases, was not on purpose. It was accidental, because in all social networks, you can find pornography from Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, well, X, Telegram. In all digital spaces, it's very easy to find. So why is this a structural risk factor? Structural because nowadays we know that 90% of our adolescents consume pornography. That it contributes to sexual socialization. Actually, it's not that it contributes, it's that it's the first source of sexual socialization for adolescents. And it generates a normalization of inequality because in pornography, there's always such an asymmetric relationship between women and men. Men tend to be much older, much powerful than women that are always subordinated. Desire, pleasure, and consent for women are not important. So, of course, it normalizes inequality, and also it erotizes violence as well, because violence and aggression towards women is really present in pornography nowadays. And then we have lots of different studies and some meta-analyses that show robust associations between pornography consumption and sexual aggression. Okay, with regards to sexting, the sexting that is conceived as well as a risk practice, as a definition, it refers to the voluntary exchange, production, or sharing of sexual content. And it's very usual, it's very common among adolescents and also among young people to explore sexuality. And the main problem is that it can function as a risk practice because it can increase vulnerability towards being victimized through one of those dynamics. For example, non-consensual dissemination, in the moment that a person sends a sexual explicit picture to another, this other can share it with whoever he wants. This is known as sexpreading. Actually, it's not the term that is used in English. In English, it's more like revenge porn. But actually, I like more this term, sexpreading, because actually this content that is shared with our permission is not porn. It's not porn. It was not made to do pornography. So I prefer sexpreading. Then it can also lead to sexual extortion, that is known as sextortion, in which there's coercion, harassment, these other kind of violence, which actually is violence, and also grooming and other coercive dynamics, grooming an adult and minor that I will explain later. So it is a very risky practice in this sense that is linked to power asymmetries, consent violations, and the persistence of the digital contents, rather than to the practice itself. What do we know about texting among adolescents? We know that, as I said before, it's a quite common practice that they do to explore sexuality. Up to 50% of adolescents report having engaged in sexting practices. And actually, they are not aware of the associated risks. So this is a task that adults should do through transparent and easy communication with them. Up to 25% of adolescents have forwarded sexual content, without consent, which would be sexpreading. And these non-consensual forwarding practices are mainly made by boys. And 90% of the victims of sexpreading are girls or young women. And of course, girls and women experience more severe consequences, because the social consequences of this act are not the same for boys and men than for girls and women. Of course, I'm not saying it's something positive for men either, but socially, women are more blamed, are more criticized, more judged because of this kind of actions than men. And this idea of the chain of digital sexual violence, or the chain of digital gender-based violence, is really important, because it helps us understand that digital violences are interconnected among them. This is like a chain that can start with risk practices that are not violent per se, but not always. They not always start with risk practices. But it can start with risk practices, but it can lead to non-consensual dissemination, and then to some coercive practices, harassment, and control. So it's like a chain, and all these kind of violences are interconnected. With regards to sexpreading, as I mentioned before, refers to the sharing of consent at the beginning, to non-consensual sharing of sexual images and videos. And as I said, it affects much more women than men. Sexpreading, as I said, goes beyond sexting. I mean, it's not the origin of sexpreading is not always practices like sexting. It can originate from other kinds of digital violence or situations. For example, because of grooming processes in which there have not been consensual practices, at the beginning, for sure, because we are referring to minors, so consensual sexual practices with an adult, of course, do not exist. Also because of the normalization of sending, receiving sexual explicit material due to the exposure to pornography. Also, the origin can be cyber harassment or other coercive practices, and also the cyber violence that occurs in former or existing intimate relationships. This idea that the origin is not always sexting and that it can be interconnected with other digital violence positions sexpreading as a node inside a broader chain of digital sexual violence. It's not an isolated behavior, with this idea of the digital chain of violence. With regards to sextortion, in this case, it involves the coercion, the harassment, the control of victims through the threats of making this material, sexual material, public. And it often occurs within existing or former relationships, that I said before. And as well, it is a mechanism of continuation and escalation rather than as an isolated act. With regards to grooming, it is a process through which adults establish trust with minors, children, adolescents, with the objective of exploiting them sexually or with the objective of sexual benefits. And of course, digital environments facilitate grooming because of anonymity, persistence, and it facilitates access to from groomers to children that in other circumstances, in offline life, would be more difficult. It occurs mainly through social networks, online video games like Roblox. I'm sure you've read some news about this. They start interacting with children, and usually grooming follows this pattern. First of all, an adult presents himself. I speak in masculine because, as well, in this case, the percentage of perpetrators is much higher in men, like 97% of perpetrators of grooming are men. So an adult presents himself as a peer or as a figure of reference to children through the internet. As I said, the primary goal is sexual exploitation or sexual benefit. This sexual benefit can occur online, but it can also occur offline, which is even more dangerous and detrimental in this way. Grooming involves these progressive strategies in which, first of all, the groomers identify vulnerability. They make sure that this child is not being supervised by parents or an adult, that they have easy access to the internet, and then they start trying to reduce their risk perception by gaining their trust, establishing what looks like a trustful relationship with children, and then after this, they start normalizing sexualized interactions with children, like show me your shoulder, or why don't you take a picture putting this face, or put yourself in this position. And once they already have these pictures or the images, they start sextorting, like sextortion with children. I will send this picture to your parents if you don't take another one without clothes. Or I will send this picture to your teachers or whatever. So it's, and here it's when harassment and coercion starts. Of course, the highest level of risk is offline when it transitions to offline encounters. What we know is that 36% of adolescents report that they communicate on a regular basis with strangers online. It's quite a common phenomenon as well. And then more than a half would be willing to meet them in person. We also know that up to 23% of adolescents receive sexual solicitations from adults online, that girls are more exposed and more likely to exchange sexual content. And again, it is related to feminine socialization, because women, especially teenagers, are told that the most important active they have is their physical appearance, the beauty, that the most desirable thing is to be sexually attractive for men. So that's why it occurs that they are more likely to exchange this sexual content. They see all these messages everywhere. With regards to cyberbullying, we know that 22.5, almost 1 of 4 adolescents report having experienced cyberbullying victimization. That is particularly prevalent among girls in the first years of secondary education, but it affects boys as well. Almost 73% of adolescents also experience, the ones that suffer cyberbullying also experience offline bullying at schools. So they suffer this through the internet or the digital space, but as well in their educational centers. That also early exposure to cyberbullying is quite common. 40% of victimized children report that they were at early ages, 8-9 years old. And cyberbullying includes a wide range of violence, from threats, insults, mockery, constant messages and calls, identity impersonation as well, and also the dissemination of messages, images, videos that are, of course, intended to damage the victim's image, many times related to sexual issues. And again, the digital environment facilitates cyberbullying through disinhibition and anonymity, this subjective perception that cause reduced empathy towards the other and towards the other's suffering. And also because of the total invasion of the personal space. Because, of course, bullying, traditional bullying or offline bullying in the educational centers is really, the consequences are very negative and detrimental for the child, for sure. It's really severe as well. But at least when the child goes out from school and goes home, at least they could be in peace in the past. But nowadays, this bullying, it continues in the school and also at home. So this is a total invasion of the personal space, which is really hard to bear, of course. Digital violence is increasingly present in adolescents and in adult intimate relationship, with this idea that it amplifies gender-based violence that occurs offline, but can occur as well online. Let's see the cyber control. Cyber control includes monitoring, surveillance, and the restriction of autonomy through digital means. It would include these 3 factors. And especially during adolescence and as well in youth, it is often normalized as care or concern. So the barrier between what is caring, concerning, and control, surveillance is quite blurry in this sense, especially for adolescents. Here you have some examples about what this is a study of Save the Children, what adolescents believe about taking the partner's mobile phone without permission, of course. There's an 8% that consider that this is acceptable in general, without permission. A 37% believe only in certain situations, 7.5 that it's always justified. This is the most dangerous item. 24 that it is justified if they feel, if they are suspicious about their partner cheating on them. 20% if they are suspicious because the partner is lying to them. And in this case, in, let's say, soft practices of cyber control, the prevalence is quite similar between boys and girls. It's quite similar. In the most severe cases of cyber control, again, we find that there's a higher prevalence among boys as perpetrators. With regards to adulthood, in the context of intimate partner relationships, it's worthy to mention that 1 in 7 women has been threatened with the dissemination of intimate images. And that perpetrators are typically current or former intimate partners, and mostly men. And just because this is something quite recent and quite new, that you must know that there have been many groups in Facebook, Telegram of men, that this is such a worrying phenomenon nowadays, because it has happened in Italy, it has happened in Portugal, it's happened in Spain, groups of more than 7,000 men that were sharing sexual images of their partners, their current partners, with the others. So this is something that should make us think what's going on nowadays with these issues. And then we also have the AI that, of course, can scale and intensify the other forms of existing digital sexual violence. For example, you'll know deepfake pornography. There's been many famous women victims of this kind of digital violence. For example, Hillary Clinton, Scarlett Johansson, many others, and also in our context in which pornography is created by the use of AI, and of course they really look totally real. It's very difficult to distinguish if they were real or they are not. And also in our context, we have 2 very well-known cases, one in Extremadura, in Almendralejo, and then another one in the Balearic Islands in Mallorca. We have many others, but those were the 2 first cases. That's why we know them better, in which adolescents took pictures from their classmates, and they, through the use of the AI, made them naked in all these pictures, and they posted them in the internet, in pornographic platforms like Pornhub and others like this. And of course, for these girls, it was really traumatic, because even though the pictures were not real, the harm is the same, because then it is really, really difficult to erase all these track of pictures that you can find in the digital spaces and platforms. With regards to the psychological impacts that this gender-based violence have on women and girls, Of course, those include anxiety and depression because of the fear of these images getting viral and not being able to control them, and the social consequences that they will have on the way the society perceives them, etc., etc. And this provoke, of course, shame and social withdrawal that also include withdrawal from the digital space as well, and other trauma-related symptoms. We all know cases that we've read or hear in the news of women and girls that have committed suicide because of this kind of digital violence. Either because of sexpreading or sextortion, we know many cases in our context, or either because of cyberbullying, for example. Another problem is that digital gender-based violence is still widely underreported. Due, first of all, to normalization, because nowadays it's like being some kind normalized that in the digital space you can get insulted or by people that you don't even know, that you post something, and especially it occurs a lot with feminists that they post something in a public profile and they get lots of insults, threats, etc. But it's something like, what do we do with this? Nothing. What we can do? Just getting used to this. So normalization is one relevant issue. And then also fear of retaliation, especially when it occurs when digital gender-based violence occur in the context of intimate relationships. There's fear of retaliation. And then also the lack of trust in the reporting mechanisms as well, as it occurs with offline gender-based violence. Women are always afraid of not of being judged, that people don't believe them, don't believe their story, the abuse they've suffered. So it occurs as well in the digital context, besides that their reporting mechanisms are less official, or they are more difficult to identify. Also, there are other limitations that are the lack of standardized indicators, as it is quite a new phenomenon, let's say. Indicators that are not enough standardized. We don't have longitudinal data. There are cross-sectional studies, interesting studies that show interesting conclusions for sure, but there's no longitudinal data, and there's a poor cross-national comparability, also due to this lack of standardized indicators. When you try to look for information about digital gender-based violence, percentages, etc., they are like very, the way they've been assessed are different in every country, in every study, so it is quite difficult to have a global perspective on them. And of course, it is somehow due to the rapid technological changes that is altering the forms and the scale of digital violence. There's always new kind of digital violence, new kinds, it's all kinds, new kinds, like this continuum. We are seeing every year new forms of digital violence, like now this one that we are seeing now about groups of men, more than 7,000, 8,000 men sharing images of their partners through the digital space. This is something new. It didn't exist before. So we are trying to understand this from a global perspective. That's why also there's the need of interdisciplinary research that integrates social science, psychology, gender studies, the legal perspective, and of course the technological analysis. What are the key takeaways? First of all, understanding digital gender-based violence as a structural and interconnected kind of violence that is more prevalent among adolescents, adolescent girls especially, and of course that it is amplified by the technological and change. And that is why we need robust, interdisciplinary, and evidence-based research. And well, thank you very much for your attention, and thanks to all the collaborating institutions that have made it possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Berta. I don't know if someone has questions to take me yet.
Thank you very much for this bleak picture of humanity.
I'm sorry about this.
I think know that like that picture to the aggressors profile. And then like a pure continuity between the offline and online world, or is there a different type of profile between the people that will do this aggression, probably not grooming, because I think that should be the part of the joke, but in adolescent men, is there a different profile between the one that will do aggression, digital violence, and the one that will actually do offline violence, or is the same kind of continuum that person? There is no really identifiable characteristic of different people, aggressors.
Thank you for the question. Actually, we could say that it's a continuity, as you said, like there's not a clear profile of perpetrators. We know that from personality traits, one of them could be impulsivity. Then, of course, misogyny has a lot to do with this. But with regards to the difference between online perpetrators and offline perpetrators, I don't know any study that have proven like real differences between them. But what we know is that the anonymity that the online interactions guarantee make that some perpetrators that wouldn't do it in offline context do it in the online context. Like there's a higher percentage of perpetrators online than offline because of this anonymity, because of this perception of disinhibition, like the anonymity triggers disinhibition. And some men that in the street, you would go to the street, for example, here I can say something that some of you don't agree with, but nobody would say me, you're a bitch for saying this. I hope so. But then in the internet, you can find lots of people that would tell you what you said is bullshit, you're stupid, etc., etc. So this, in extreme cases, can be the same pattern. The patterns can be comparable in this sense. And with regards to the perpetrator's profile, like in general, there are many studies, but they don't reach consensus about what is the profile of perpetrators in terms of, because there are perpetrators that in some studies, for example, the educational level proves to be an important variable. But some studies that go beyond these, they see that men with high levels of education, they tend not to report these kind of things because they know that this is not appropriate. So, well, it's quite difficult. But of course, in a stressful context, violence is more present because of the stressful context itself. But it doesn't mean that in other contexts that are not that much stressful or hostile, or it can also appear.
We are seeing a lot of government actions to restrict social networks, especially to adolescents. The Spanish government itself announced it a couple of days ago. The Spanish government also would like to make the technological CEO responsible for what is done through the social media. I think about what happened at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year with X and the images that the artificial intelligence created. So would it be enough, or it is just trying to manage the consequences of a social problem that is more broader? Because I mean, even on the example that you mentioned about Facebook, of course, there is this platform that helps spreading these images, but there is also an action that is made from men in this case that thinks that this action are actually available. I don't know how to say.
Yes, I think that this action is needed from my point of view. It's not enough, probably. It's not enough, but it's needed, because what we are seeing nowadays with adolescents is that they cannot manage the amount of inputs, negative inputs that they receive. Their brain is not mature enough. They don't have sexual imaginary constructed. They are very vulnerable to see to aesthetic pressure, for example, no? And that's what they see in social networks. So I actually think that they don't have the need of being in social networks. They have the need to go out, share time with their classmates, play football, basketball, volleyball, whatever, talk in the park, whatever. But for me, this is an important and very needed measure. Let's see how it works, because actually the mechanisms that are going to be used for this verification, let's see if it works. But at least for me, this step is really important.
It's known that in Australia has been implemented for months ago, and how they do it.
Yeah, what I've read is that in Australia, the mechanisms that they are using, it's like everything, they are being, they are not, the results are not totally positive as they were expected to be. But what I think is, well, we are at the beginning. We have a long way to implement all these mechanisms. So we learn by doing. So let's see how they do it in Australia, even though they started not many months ago. So there's not many advantage between them and us. But let's work together from a global perspective to try to reduce this level of violence that our children and adolescents are receiving in different grades. Some of them degrees, sorry. Some of them severe, some other not. But the messages they receive in the internet in general can be very negative for them. So I applaud this.
If you talk about these mechanisms of reporting, if you're an adolescent girl and you receive whatever, and just you don't want, are there mechanisms of reporting at all? Because who do you talk to? Your parents, maybe teachers, or but what is there something real? Something like somewhere you can really talk to it can take a specific action to protect you? I'm not aware of it.
I think that there's some initiatives from INCIBE and any other organisms that I'm not an expert on this, but there are some initiatives in this sense. And actually, you can also go to the, let's say, to the police station to yeah, that's the main problem. So the initiatives that exist are not really working well. Again, so this is something new. We're trying to adapt and regulate it in the best way, but we are arriving late. Actually, we're arriving late. And I think it's really important what you said about parents, teachers, because this is very, very important. And I also added to the answer I was giving to your colleague that very mechanisms of verification are important, but also communication with parents, communication with teachers. We need to talk to our children, our adolescents about sexuality, about violence, about all these kind of things that we really feel not at ease because we are not used to talk about this. But this is very important. That when a child, for example, sees non-intentionally a pornographic image, it is very important that this child can tell us. And actually, studies prove that only 1%, one of 100 children that sees this kind of images tells an adult. Only one. out of 10, out of 100, which is really worrying. So actually, from the social perspective, there's still much work to do with children and adolescents in many areas, from the technological area for sure, but also from an educational perspective, the social, etc. Okay. I think you'll have to help me, Nuria. Sorry. Okay.
Is the first, the second.
Okay, thank you, Nuria. Okay, first question. Is this cyber control among partners a reflection of what they are used in their family circle? Control over themselves, control seen and one. Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. It is violence in general is related to what we have lived with our first attachment figures. This is something that has been totally proved that the fact of witnessing violence or control during the first years of our life in which we are interiorizing the social norms, the gender norms, etc., have a lot to do with how we will deal with violence in our adult lives. So, of course, there is a relationship between digital violence experiences and how we deal with them, and the way we perceived violence or conflicts, let's say conflicts, in our childhood. There's a relationship. Yeah. Okay, and then we have beyond the centrality of education to avoid this tendency. What is your opinion regarding the use of AI and regulations to counter this? Well, my opinion about AI is ambivalent, I think, like everyone. Of course, I think it's a very useful tool that makes things much easier for everyone, and that we can use it in lots of contexts. I don't know, I use it a lot and it helps me a lot. But you need to know how to use it, and I think that we need to put barriers to the use of the AI, especially, for example, with the generation of images or issues that can generate confusion, let's say, and situations of violence towards women, girls, and also men, for sure, in this case. I'm sure you know this. At the beginning of this year, we had this a problem, let's say, but in X, in Twitter, with Grok, that was used to make pornographic pictures of women in this platform. It was a way to legitimize women's opinions, or in the context of arguing in this social network. Men use this arm to delegitimize women, and it was used during some weeks. Nowadays, it seems it's more regulated, which is good. It's not great, but it's better than before. And this is the way we have to deal with the AI pressure. Denuncias, the word in Spanish, in English doesn't come to my mind now, and this way we will start regulating all these questions. And then, yeah, that's all.
One thing, we're talking all the time between men and women, girls and boys, men and boys, it's been an perspective. And what about the other genders? Also, this kind of analysis or studies,
There are many studies that, of course, this collective LGBTIQ, they are much more victimized through the digital space as well. This is not in my expertise, but of course they are more victimized through the internet as well because of their sexual orientation. And well, from this intersectional analysis, this is a plus of vulnerability for sure.
And for the studies, then you are based on surveys, or you collect information from the social networks and you analyze the information, but how do you do this kind of analysis? Because now it's quite difficult to collect information from social networks.
No, actually, in our case, the studies that we carry out are more based on self-reports. We ask adolescents, young women about their experiences of victimization online. This is one of our main research lines nowadays. And also, of course, from other studies, all the research that I have shown today, they are not ours. Some of them, of course, are from other studies. And from this data that we have from other studies help us to build more research lines that unfortunately are related to the fact that there's every day more and more kinds of digital violence that are shown through research.
No questions then? Yeah, but we can finish here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.